There are decks out there that are meta, that are really good for competition. This is not one of them. This is a Sakazuki deck made solely for the fact if you are facing your friend who is playing Blackbeard, beating them with Sakazuki. That's it. This deck is not good. This deck cannot win competitions. I play tested this against Shanks, against Buggy, against Luffy, against Bonnie, against so many decks. It's not good, but it's fun. And that's the key about this. So if you're facing your friend who's playing Blackbeard and you want to beat them with a black and blue Sakazuki, an F tier leader, this is the way to do it. Now, I don't recommend this for any competition. Your 4 life is just a little bit too expensive. However, against a Blackbeard leader, this is a lot of fun. Let me walk through how this works. So you have your ulti, which lets you look through the top 3 to search for a card. It's really nice, and you can also put the rest in the top or bottom. You want to play this before they get to the 10 drop, of course. You have the Duval, which lets you sort through your card deck, top 3 to the top or bottom. Boon for -4 cost. Viola for removing cards from their trash. It kind of reduces Jesus' ability. We have one negative soldier for -3, activate main. We have Perona, which is -3 cost, but I mainly use it for the discard. We have the Kaido, which trashes a card and also trashes a card from your hand, trashes a card from the opponent's hand after trashing a 7 cost character. We have the Jack, which lets you filter through your hand, activate main, +4 costs. We have the Pudding, which is on play. If they have 5 or more cards, then your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. We have the 3000 Worlds, which removes a 5 cost. We have the Raging Tiger, which removes a 6 cost, 2 of them. Ice Age and Negative Hollow. So the idea about this is that you're going to use a lot of these trashing cards to remove cards from their hand. I had Pudding before, I just didn't see a use for it just because Blackbeard goes to 5 a lot, doesn't go really higher above that. So one of the things you can do is remove cards from their field. Comboing the Ice Age with the 3000 Worlds gets rid of their 10 cost Blackbeard. Having the Kaido alongside a lot of other cards here will reduce the cost. So you know if they're coming to 10 costs, you can play your Laboon -4 costs and then just do Kaido or do various other things. Again, use a lot of these on-play abilities early on to sort through your cards. And then you can also play out interesting builds like Pudding, get them down to 4 life. You notice how they counter. So once they use their counter, you want them to counter. That means they have less counters in their hands. That means they have more stronger builds. You want to get rid of their 10 costs. So the Negative Hollow really comes to play to make them trash cards. You can have Perona and you can have the Pudding to trash cards as well. You know, I could replace this. I know this was kind of more for like Nami's or other decks, but I've discovered after play testing this deck only does well against non-meta decks. I mean, it could do well against Nami, it can do well a lot of other decks, but not against the top. So yeah, again, this is just for fun. Do not bring this to your locals competition. You can bring it maybe at your locals, but you're not going to have fun. It's really hard. But the Raging Tiger is fun. The 3000 Worlds is fun. Reducing the cost is always going to be good for your Jacks or your Kaidos. Jacks helps you filter through your hand a little bit, but the Negative Hollows comboed with a lot of these other builds is what we come to play. So yeah, enough talking. Let's get into the gameplay. All right, so we are facing Blackbeard. Now, this is a lot of fun because Blackbeard relies upon searching for the 10 drop. Now, you want to use your on-play abilities right away, like I played this Duval, to sort through your life, your deck, and be able to work around what they play. I really like using Sakazuki against Blackbeard because I have a lot of cards that just, I have a lot of events that can kind of surpass their on-play ability, negating my on-play abilities. And I have a lot of cards here that let me sort through as well. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I have my on-play still available, which I do, and then play my ulti to be able to search. Now they get rid of it and they have 1 Dawn left. I imagine they're going to use their searcher, so they do the 6k instead, which caught me off guard, but I'm going to use my blocker because they can probably KO it really easily. So I'm going to use my Negative Hollow, which is an MVP against Blackbeard. It kind of forces them to get rid of like really important cards, especially after they counter. In this case, they use their counter and they have no cards in hand. They search and they get a Lafayette, which they're going to use again to search again. I know they have the Jesus purchase, but then with the 1k counter, I use my Gravity Blade to get rid of it. Now they have 0 cards in the field and 0 cards cards in hand. Now, with this many Dons available, there is a chance they play like really nice cards, but they don't. I don't use my negative holo because there's no point to, and they have the Laboon on the field. I'm going to set up these cards to the top of my deck because I can actually use them to get rid of a lot of the cards they play. I'm going to use negative holo to give them 0 card advantage. They have nothing. They're going to summon cards, and let's say, for example, they get a 10 drop, and which will be something that I'll just have to work around. But I'm not worried about it because I have my Gravity Blades coming up. I'm going to block that. I'm going to get rid of both their cards from their field and then start swinging into them and kind of force them lower and lower. I have my 3-legged soldier on the field, and I know they have, in this case, they actually get rid of my Perona, which is fine by me. They have 2 cards, so I know they didn't have their 10 drop that turn. I'm going to take the life here. Now with 10 Dons available, now knowing that I don't have an on-play ability, I'm going to swing 5k into them, kind of just force their hand, see what they have. In this case, now I know they have those Teach, which is going to be fine, but I'm going to set my Laboon for when I do need to get rid of it. So they have a choice to make. They have only 2 cards and 10 Dawn available. They're going to play the 10 drop and then negate my Laboon effect, which I'm actually not worried about. I'm going to counter for 1 and then use my Gravity Blade to KO that Martial D Teach. They have 0 life left and 3 cards in hand. Now with this much, they kind of need to rely upon the 10 drop, which they don't have. They get rid of my Laboon. They play their blocker and they swing at me for 9k. Now, this is something I can just take, but of course, I just do the math, swing 7k, they kind of force their blocker, and then swing 8k into them. They request a rematch, which I accept, and then in this case, I want to work around, kind of make sure I have enough cards to kind of get rid of their hand size and get rid of a lot of things. So the pudding comes into play, forces them to trash a card, and then from here, I'm going to just end turn. Now, that's interesting because the moment they trash these cards, it just gets them closer and closer to cards that are more important. This means that, when I swing at them, they might have less counters. You want to keep track of what they play. Now, they're going to swing 8k at me, and I don't use the effect. I have 4 Dons available. I'm going to swing 5k into them, kind of hoping they take a life so I can play my pudding. But of course, that was a mistake because I didn't realize afterwards I should have just swung 7k and then do the pudding. But that's fine. I have 2 Don available, and I have Viola, which will, make their Jesus a little bit weaker. So there they have 5 Dons available. They're going to decide to swing 10k at me. I don't use my effect, but I have the 3,000 worlds, which is going to be very good for me when I swing later. Now I'm going to swing 7k into them, kind of force them, but they use the ability to draw and get more cards, and then they're going to have 7 Dawn available. Now, with my 1 cost and 4 cost combination, I can get rid of 10 costs. I'm not actually worried about those. They're going to get rid of my Viola, which I'm not worried about either because it doesn't really have an effect. I'm going to get rid of my pudding because now at this point they're going to be... It's going to be harder and harder for them to get cards in hand. Now, in this case, I'm going to use my Gravity Blade because I don't want their small blocker alive when their 10 blocker is alive as well as their Lafayette's going to help them search cards. They're going to play 2 Laboons, which is really scary, but of course, with my Gravity Blades, this is where I can kind of starve them out, if you would. Now, with my ability, I'm going to use a 6k and then kind of force their hand playing a 1-legged soldier. This means that if they play the 10 cost, I can still kind of use my effects to get rid of it. Of course, pudding's not available, so I do my Gravity Blade, my Ice Age, and my 3,000 Worlds to KO their blocker, swing 5k and then another 5k into them. They can use a counter if they have it, and we'll just see if they do. They do have a counter, but then they only have 2 cards in hand. So they play their 10 cost, which is going to be very interesting to see, and 1 card in hand. Now, in this case, they are going to swing at me. I want to counter out because I want to make sure that I have enough to survive. I'm just double checking to see if my on-play effect is still there, and it is. So I swing 5k to just see what they have. I know they can't swing with my 3-legged soldier, so I'm going to just play my Deval to kind of start getting cards into my hand that I need and set up my Perona for my counter swing. Now, I do have a blocker available, and they only have 3 cards available, so I have a lot of flexibility here. They're going to get rid of my Perona, which makes sense, and then from here, they're going to decide to swing 12k at me. I take and use negative holo, which is, again, very scary as a trigger effect. They have 6 Dons available, and from here, they're going to decide to play their Vanguard, which, just means that they don't have anything and they're kind of giving up. And they're going to swing 6k, which I just take as well. And here I just swing 5k for the game. Alright, so today's video is a little different. I have a montage of games I've lost trying to build this deck and make it work. It doesn't work. But it does work for some reason against Blackbeard because you trash your hand and it catches them off guard. It's more of a for fun deck, and of course, as we get farther and farther into, let's say, OP09 or etc., I feel like it's getting harder and harder for certain non-meta decks to really strive. When you have Doflamingo that summons a million units, when you have Shanks that will just rush you down, when you have Blackbeard that just KOs or just gets rid of your abilities, There's just too much out there in terms of meta capabilities that you can't really deal with these off-meta picks. However, again, this is a local, maybe just with your friend who's playing Blackbeard, let me just play this for fun. And just at the end of the day, isn't that what we strive to do? So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it's not the most exciting of videos. Of course, we want to try to build non-meta decks that beat meta decks. But this was just, I think, like 2 hours of just experimenting. And I was like realizing, okay, yeah, Sokka's a little rough. But sometimes you got to play with the trash decks to appreciate the meta ones. Catch you guys next time. Please like and subscribe.